Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dave Quast. I'm the California Director of Energy In Depth, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the subcommittee on this important topic. Many people don't realize the significant role that oil and natural gas have played in California's history, or the incredible opportunities that increased in-state production would afford us. These opportunities include high-paying jobs in our most economically troubled region, increased investment in tax revenue, environmental protection, and of course, energy security. California's oil and natural gas industry has been part of the backbone of our state's economy for more than 150 years. We have abundant energy resources, particularly in Kern and Los Angeles counties, and our laws and regulations reflect the high priority that we place on environmental stewardship. Californians of all political persuasions know that economic development and environmental protection can coexist. Indeed, this has been our tradition for more than a century. As the President frequently and proudly points out, for the first time in 20 years, the United States produces more oil at home than we buy from other countries. Unfortunately, in California, we still import more than half of our oil from overseas. But it doesn't have to be this way. California is the third largest energy producing state, and Governor Brown has indicated that he intends for this energy leadership to continue. But this requires making a choice. We can generate more of our energy at home, as the rest of the country has been doing in recent years, or we can import it, often from politically fraught regions with all the geopolitical risk that entails, as well as the environmental disadvantages. Happily, we have what appear to be the ingredients for success right under our feet, not only in California's existing oil fields, but also in the Monterey Shale Formation. As the subcommittee is no doubt aware, the U.S. Energy Information Administration estimates that the Monterey Shale may contain as many as 15 billion barrels of recoverable oil, which would account for 2/3 of the U.S. resource, making it the largest such reserve in the country and possibly the world. For perspective, it's many times larger than the economically successful Bakken and Eagle Ford formations. Currently in California, the petroleum industry supports 95,000 direct jobs and more than 250,000 indirect jobs. And there's good reason to believe that we're only scratching the surface of our potential as we learn to access new reserves. According to a recent study by California State University Fresno, which used relatively conservative production forecasts, if technical challenges can be surmounted and depending on the pace of innovation and deployment, the development of the Monterey Shale could lead to as many as 195,000 new direct jobs in the San Joaquin Valley and boost personal income there by $22 billion, all by the year 2030. This could be at the beginning of an economic renaissance in a region suffering from crippling double-digit unemployment. And it's worth remembering that the history of energy development is really the history of technology development. North Dakota's economic miracle didn't happen overnight. It took decades of work, including trial and error, until the techniques that we now consider routine were perfected. But that reality shouldn't hide the fact that technological innovation is itself a powerful job creator, all the better when it comes from private investment. Now, unfortunately in California, there's a small but vocal group of radical anti-industry activists whose goal is to shut down domestic oil and gas production starting in California. They've tried to disguise this goal in a misguided and ill-informed attack on hydraulic fracturing. The good news is that despite activists' repeated claims otherwise, the scientific consensus that fracking technology is fundamentally safe with manageable risks has prevailed in California. Last year, the state's overwhelmingly Democratic legislature soundly defeated a bill to put a moratorium on the practice. The legislature instead passed the nation's most sweeping regulations on well stimulation, which we in the industry thought were overreaching, but which nevertheless mean that companies can continue to responsibly and safely produce oil and gas, albeit in an even more heavily regulated environment. Now, not to be deterred, the most radical of the activists continue to hold rallies and continue to chant demonstrably untrue slogans like climate leaders don't frack. But in fact, the United States leads the world in carbon emission reductions because of the increased use of low-cost natural gas in the nation's power plants, something not possible without shale and hydraulic fracturing. And just as importantly, even though overall demand for oil is down, California remains the third largest consumer of gas and diesel in the world, behind only the United States as a whole and China. In fact, 96% of our state's transportation is petroleum-based, and the EIA estimates that by the year 2040, still 80% of our energy will come from fossil fuels. Meanwhile, every barrel of oil we produce in California is a barrel that we don't import from countries with fewer environmental protections. Californians tend to be proud of our state's environmental leadership, and it's frankly bizarre that there are activists that would ask their elected officials to ignore established science and instead ban techniques that help us improve both our energy security and our environment at home, not to mention the jobs they create. So whether we're talking about oil or natural gas, increased domestic production is good for both the economy and the environment, and this is something that even the most radical environmentalists should celebrate and not oppose as a matter of ideology. In any case, the groundwork has been laid for the next chapter in our long history of energy production, a history that should include many more jobs for Californians, more state revenue, more economic activity, lower global carbon emissions, and yes, less reliance on imported oil. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Olson.